Your dimuncular vibration is active. These 7 signs prove it. There's a moment in every spiritual journey when something shifts, not softly, not quietly, but like a thunderclap inside your soul. It's not a meditation. It's not a mantra. It's a frequency flip. A moment when your inner vibration becomes so high, so pure, so aligned with divine truth that anything false, parasitic, manipulative, or dark simply cannot remain near you. It's like your energy field becomes a sword, and suddenly what used to manipulate you, what used to drain you, haunt you, confuse you, starts to run from you. You don't chase demons anymore. They flee from you. Because your vibration has become a weapon of light. A vibration that kills what doesn't belong in your sacred field. That's what we call the dimuncular vibration. And the moment it activates in you, everything changes.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
People often think spiritual power is about rituals, robes, or crystals. But real power doesn't need props. Real power is frequency, and frequency doesn't lie. You can pretend to be spiritual. You can say all the right words, but your vibration will always reveal your true level of embodiment. And when your vibration crosses a certain threshold, you don't need to defend yourself anymore. The energy does it for you. Just like light doesn't need to argue with darkness, it just shows up and the dark disappears. That's how your field begins to work. But this isn't something you can fake. It only activates when you've done the work. When you've burned through the illusion. When you've faced yourself in the mirror of silence and said, "I'm ready to become who I truly am." The first sign that your dimuncular vibration is active is that people with hidden agendas start falling out of your life fast. Not slowly, not over time, but in quick, almost shocking waves. One week you're surrounded by certain people, and the next week it feels like they've vanished. You didn't argue, you didn't push them away, but something in your field became so clear, so strong, that their masks couldn't hold up anymore. And here's the wild part, not only do they leave, but they often don't even know why they pulled away. It's like their soul couldn't tolerate your light. Because deep down, they knew they couldn't manipulate you anymore. And you didn't even have to say a word. The second sign is emotional clarity. You stop second-guessing your intuition. No more gaslighting yourself. No more trying to be nice at the cost of your boundaries. But when your dimuncular vibration is active, your inner compass becomes razor sharp. You feel it instantly when something is off, whether it's a person, a space, a message, or even a thought pattern. You don't need confirmation. You don't need proof. You feel it in your gut, and you trust it. Because you've learned that your inner knowing is more accurate than any external opinion. And that kind of clarity scares people who thrive in confusion, but it liberates you. The third sign is silence. Not just outer silence, but inner silence. The constant mental chatter, the obsessive overthinking, the spiraling anxiety, it begins to dissolve. Your mind becomes a temple, not a battlefield. Why? Because you've stopped feeding the illusions that created the noise in the first place. You've stopped negotiating with fear. You've stopped trying to fix things that were never yours to fix. And in that silence, you hear something deeper, your soul. And when you start living from that place, when your decisions, your words, your presence come from soul instead of ego, you become untouchable. The fourth sign is that you no longer feel the need to prove yourself. Not spiritually, not emotionally, not in relationships. You stop performing, stop over-explaining, stop trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You realize that your energy speaks louder than your words ever could. And that kind of self-possession is magnetic. It draws people who are ready to grow and repels people who only want to drain. You become like a mirror. You reflect people's truth back to them. And some will love you for it, others will run. Either way, you remain centered, grounded, free. The fifth sign is that your body starts speaking more clearly. Your nervous system becomes a divine instrument. You feel when you're in alignment and when you're not. You feel when a space is sacred and when it's toxic. You feel when a conversation is nourishing and when it's draining. Your body becomes a compass, not a cage. And you honor it. You no longer override your exhaustion to be productive. You no longer ignore your gut to be polite. You listen. You adapt. You protect your vessel like it's a temple because it is. And that sacred embodiment is what keeps your vibration sharp, lethal to anything parasitic. The sixth sign is that your dreams become more prophetic. You start receiving downloads, visions, messages not just about your own life, but about others. You see what's hidden. You feel what's unspoken. You begin to understand that time is not linear and that your consciousness can access deeper realms of knowing. And it's not because you're special. It's because you've become clear, and clarity is the highway of spirit. The less clutter in your field, the more easily higher truth can move through you. So you begin to see patterns before they unfold. You begin to feel events before they happen. Not as a performance, but as a natural consequence of your vibrational alignment. And the seventh sign, you're no longer afraid of darkness. Not because you enjoy it, not because you seek it, but because you understand it. You've faced your own shadows. You've sat in your own fire. You've walked through your own underworld. And now you see darkness not as evil but as unintegrated energy. You don't bypass it. You don't worship it. You meet it. You speak to it. You transmute it. And that's why darkness no longer controls you. Because you're not afraid to look it in the eye and say, "I see you, but I am no longer yours." So I ask you now, if you were to walk into a room and every hidden energy, every masked intention, every shadow had to reveal itself in your presence, what would change? Would you be ready to see what's real? Why parasites hate you now, the energetic war you didn't know you won? Something strange starts to happen when your demuncular vibration is active. But it's not just that people behave differently around you, it's that the unseen world responds to you in an entirely new way. And not always with applause. See, there are forces, energies, entities, thought forms, even entire frequencies that don't want you to wake up. Not because they're evil in the cartoonish sense, but because your awakening threatens their survival. They feed on unconsciousness. They live in your indecision, your self-doubt, your wounds. And the moment you rise out of that fog, the buffet is over. That's why they hate you now, because you're no longer food. You're fire, and you've won a war that many people don't even know exists. Let's get something clear. Energetic parasites are real. They're not just spirits floating around in horror movies. They're embedded into patterns, systems, relationships, thoughts. They're part of the architecture of unconscious living. They feed on repetition, on survival mode, on unresolved trauma. When you're stuck in loops chasing validation, betraying your truth, fearing rejection, they thrive. But once your vibration shifts into full embodiment, once your light becomes sovereign, they start to lose grip. They can't attach to you anymore. Your field becomes inhospitable, and that's when they panic. You'll feel it, not in some dramatic exorcism-style moment, but in the subtle pushback of life. Old patterns will try to re-emerge. People from your past will show up. Sudden fatigue, random emotional spirals, confusion, delay. It's not coincidence, it's resistance. Not from your soul, but from the energies that are being evicted. They don't want to leave quietly, but they must leave, because your frequency has become incompatible with their presence. You're no longer a host, you're a furnace. And everything that was feeding off your leaking light is now burning in the heat of your awareness. This is why boundaries suddenly become non-negotiable. You don't just want peace, you require it. You don't tolerate energy drains, fake smiles, or passive-aggressive conversations. Not because you're sensitive, but because your field is now precise. It knows what it needs to stay clean. And anything outside of that becomes physically uncomfortable. You can't fake it till you make it anymore. You either align or you suffer. That's how high your vibration has risen. It's not about being perfect, it's about being true. And truth automatically purges distortion. Some people will say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're intense. But what they're really feeling is the disconnection between your rising frequency and their stagnant one. And you're not judging them. You're just no longer available to play small so they can feel big. You're no longer shrinking your truth so they can avoid theirs. You're not rejecting them, you're refusing to betray yourself. And to those who are still hosting parasites in their field, that feels like rejection. But it's not. It's liberation. You're not abandoning them. You're showing them what's possible. Here's something no one tells you. When you truly rise, you don't just cleanse yourself, you cleanse your lineage. You begin to break generational patterns of shame, fear, scarcity, silence. The parasites that fed on your ancestors' pain now see you as a threat. You're not just healing yourself, you're disrupting an entire energetic food chain. You're ending contracts signed in trauma. You're dissolving agreements made in survival. And that's why life might get intense before it gets peaceful. Because you're not just lighting a candle, you're burning down a system. And that's why this journey isn't for the faint of heart. But you didn't come here to play safe. You came here to remember that you are not a victim of energy, you are its architect. That your vibration is not just a mood, it's a command. And when you command from truth, parasites scatter, manipulations collapse, illusions dissolve. You become a force that doesn't just survive the dark, you transforms it. So I ask you, what are you still feeding with your attention that no longer deserves your energy? Because the moment you pull your light back, the false must fall. The hidden cost of your old self and why you'll never go back. There's a moment in every awakening where you look back and realize the true price you paid for being who you used to be. Not just in time or effort, but in energy, in soul, in life force. You start to see it clearly, the way you shrank to fit into rooms that didn't have space for your truth. The way you silenced your intuition to be accepted. The way you wore masks so others could feel comfortable around your light. And when you really see it not just intellectually but viscerally, you realize something: you'll never go back. But not because you're angry, not because you're superior, but because the cost was too high. And now you know better. Your old self was never wrong. It was survival. It was strategy. It was the version of you that knew how to navigate a world that didn't yet reflect your soul. But survival has an expiration date. And if you keep living like you're still in danger emotionally, spiritually, energetically, then you betray the very healing you fought so hard to claim. That's where most people stay stuck. They awaken just enough to see the illusion, but not enough to leave it behind. They visit their truth, but still pay rent in their old story. They say they've changed, but keep proving their worth to the same systems that once rejected them. But that's the silent suffering of awakening without embodiment. And you've crossed that line now. You've stepped into a frequency where pretending isn't an option anymore, where your body physically reacts when you try to fake a smile, when you say yes but mean no, when you sit in a room that vibrates with misalignment. Your nervous system is no longer willing to lie. And that's not a flaw, it's your freedom. That's your homuncular vibration doing its job. It's not just clearing out external parasites. It's purging the internal ones too, the thought patterns, the beliefs, the identities that kept you small, that kept you manageable, that kept you locked in a version of yourself that was never true. And yet, there's grief in that. Grief for the old self, for the years spent performing, for the friendships you outgrew, for the love you gave to people who couldn't meet you, or for the energy you poured into being digestible. That grief is real, and it's not weakness, it's sacred mourning. You're not just letting go of the past. You're honoring the version of you that kept going even when it hurt, and the version that didn't know better but still tried, the version that made it possible for this version of you to exist. That grief is holy, let it move through you, because what comes after it is clarity, clarity that shows you just how much of your life was built on fear, fear of being alone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being rejected. And now, you're not afraid anymore. Or if you are, you're no longer obedient to that fear. That's the shift. That's the moment you stop negotiating with your shadow and start walking in your power. Not because you've conquered everything, but because you're no longer willing to abandon yourself for the illusion of peace. And here's the paradox. The more you step into this new self, the real self, the more you feel like you're finally home. Not in a place, not in a relationship, but in your being. You stop searching for safety because you become it. You stop chasing love because you embody it. You stop needing validation because your existence is your evidence. And once you taste this, once you live this, there's no going back. Not because you burned bridges, but because the bridge itself no longer exists. The frequency you used to live in, it's gone, dissolved, transmuted. You didn't just leave the old self, you outgrew it. So now when people from your past try to pull you back into old roles, old dynamics, old expectations, it doesn't even feel real. It's like trying to wear clothes that no longer fit your soul. You don't reject them out of anger. You simply don't resonate anymore. And resonance is everything. It's the language of the universe. When your vibration changes, your reality must change too. Not because you're forcing it, but because alignment is a law. And you're finally aligned with you. So I ask you now, what part of your old self are you still keeping alive out of guilt, habit, or fear? And what would happen if you let it die? You became the weapon. Why darkness now fears your presence? There's a moment on the spiritual path when you stop trying to protect yourself from darkness because you realize you are the protection. You don't need to chant louder, wear more crystals, or light more sage. You are the sage. You are the light. You are the fire that darkness cannot touch. And when this truth finally lands in your body, not just as a concept but as a knowing, something irreversible happens. You stop walking into rooms wondering if you'll be okay, and the room starts wondering if it will be okay. Because your presence has become a force, a mirror, a weapon of truth. You became the very thing that once terrified you. And now, darkness fears you. But let's be clear, this didn't happen overnight. You didn't just wake up and become untouchable. You earned this. Through heartbreak, through isolation, through silence, through shedding layers of yourself you thought you needed. You bled for this clarity. You cried for this peace. You walked through the fire of your own ego and came out with your soul intact. And now, without even trying, your field speaks before you do. It announces your frequency. It vibrates with precision. It tells entities, energies, people, and patterns, this one can't be fooled anymore. When your homuncular vibration is fully activated, your very presence begins to purify a space. You don't need to preach. You don't need to fix anyone. Just your being, your stillness, your gaze, your breath begins to disrupt the illusions around you. Why? Because you no longer carry the resonance of fear. You no longer carry that subtle scent of self-abandonment that unconscious forces used to hook into your field. You emit coherence, and coherence is poison to distortion. You'll notice it in conversations. People will either open up and unravel in your presence, or they will shut down and flee. Not because you're doing anything to them, but because your energy demands alignment. It brings up what's hidden. It reflects what's unspoken. It reveals what's been denied. And this is important. You are not attacking anyone. You are simply being. But your being has become a weapon of truth. In truth doesn't need to raise its voice. It just is. And in its presence, everything false begins to tremble. You'll also notice that your guidance becomes faster, sharper, more multidimensional. Things you used to wrestle with, decisions, doubts, emotional spirals, they dissolve before they even begin. Because you're no longer operating from your wounds. You're operating from your knowing, then from your spine, from your alignment. And from that place, you don't need to control outcomes. You move when it's time. You rest when it's time. You speak when it's time. You've become synchronized with the intelligence of your soul. And when you live from that level of attunement, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a sacred choreography. But here's the part most people miss. When you become the weapon, you must also become the guardian, not of others, but of yourself. Because light this pure, this powerful, it must be protected. Not in fear, but in reverence. You become intentional with your energy. You stop explaining your boundaries, and you stop negotiating your intuition. You stop giving access to people who haven't earned the right to sit in your field. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not heartless. You're honoring, and in doing so, you teach others to rise not by trying to save them, but by refusing to lower yourself again. This is spiritual sovereignty, not the kind that's flashy or loud, but the kind that moves mountains with a whisper. The kind that breaks generational curses with a single choice. The kind that walks into darkness and doesn't flinch not because you're fearless, but because you remembered who you are. And now you walk differently, you speak differently, you love differently, not because you've changed, but because you've returned to the original frequency of your soul, the frequency that cannot be manipulated, shamed, or dimmed, the frequency that says, I am. And when you live from that vibration, darkness doesn't just retreat, it bows. So I leave you with this final question. Now that you've become the weapon, what sacred thing will you choose to protect with your light? Because this journey doesn't end with your awakening. It begins there. The real question is, what will you build now that your demons can no longer follow?